On a warm summer afternoon in a quiet American town, Daniel, a 36-year-old mechanic, was finishing his work for the day at his small, worn-down garage. His shop wasn't fancy, but it carried the smell of oil and grease that told stories of old. Trucks, broken tractors, and everyday people who relied on him. As he stepped outside to breathe in the fresh air, he noticed a little girl on the other side of the street. She was struggling with a small pink bicycle, the chain dangling loose while her small hands tried desperately to fix it. The girl's name was Lily, only 7 years old, and her face was red with frustration. Her tiny fingers were smeared with black grease, and her lips trembled as she tugged at the stubborn chain. "Come on," she whispered to herself, tears welling up in her eyes. Daniel, watching her, felt a familiar tug at his heart. He had a son of his own, close to her age, and he knew how helpless children could feel in such moments. Without hesitation, he wiped his hands on his rag and walked toward her. "Hey there, need some help?" Daniel asked gently, crouching down so he was at her level. Lily sniffled and nodded quickly, almost embarrassed to admit defeat. "Please, sir," she said softly, "my mom told me to come home before dark, and I can't ride like this." Her voice cracked with worry, and Daniel smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry," he said, rolling the bike into his shop. "We'll have you back on the road in no time." Lily's eyes lit up with relief as she followed him inside. Inside the small garage, Daniel examined the bike with practiced ease. The chain had slipped off and the brakes were worn, but to him it was nothing complicated. He whistled lightly as he worked, wanting to calm Lily's nerves. She stood nearby, watching him with wide eyes. Within minutes, Daniel had the chain back in place, tightened the brakes, and gave the tires some extra air. He could see her amazement, the way her mouth formed a small wow, as if he had performed magic. For Daniel, it was a simple repair. For Lily, it was a miracle. When he finished, Lily quickly reached into her pocket and pulled out a few coins she had saved. Her small hand shook as she held them out. "This is all I have," she said honestly. Daniel looked at the coins, then at her innocent face, and slowly shook his head. "Keep it, kiddo," he said kindly. "Your safety matters more than money. Promise me you'll ride carefully now." Lily blinked in surprise, her lips parting as though no one had ever refused her payment before. She tucked the coins back into her pocket, her heart swelling with gratitude. Then, in a moment that caught Daniel completely off guard, Lily whispered, "I wish you could marry my mom. She's always sad, and you're so nice." The words hung in the air, pure and innocent, straight from a child's heart. Daniel froze, unsure what to say, his chest tightening with unexpected emotion. Finally, he knelt down, gently patting her shoulder. "That's a sweet thing to say," he murmured, "but right now, let's just make sure you get home safe." Lily grinned brightly, hopped onto her bike and pedaled away, leaving Daniel standing at the doorway, her words echoing in his mind long after she disappeared down the street. That evening, as Daniel closed his shop, he couldn't stop thinking about Lily's innocent words. They replayed in his head like a melody he couldn't escape. "I wish you could marry my mom," he wondered. What kind of life the little girl had at home? What sadness she was too young to fully understand. Daniel had known hardship himself, raising his son Ben alone after losing his wife years ago. He recognized the tone in Lily's voice, a longing for comfort, for a presence she felt was missing. It struck him deeply, more than he wanted to admit. The following day, Daniel was surprised when the same little pink bike rolled up to his garage again. This time, Lily wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a woman, tall with tired eyes but a soft beauty that shone even through her exhaustion. She introduced herself as Sarah, Lily's mother. "My daughter insisted we come thank you," she said, her voice polite but carrying a hint of weariness. Daniel wiped his hands on his rag and smiled warmly, extending his hand. Sarah hesitated before shaking it, her touch firm but cautious. Lily immediately ran to the corner of the shop, showing Ben Daniel's son, her newly fixed bike with pride. The two children laughed and played as if they'd known each other for years. Watching them, Sarah's stern expression softened. "She doesn't smile like that often," she admitted quietly. Daniel glanced at her, hearing more in her words than she intended to reveal. "Kids need a little kindness," he replied. "Sometimes that's all it takes." Sarah nodded, but her eyes looked away, as if carrying secrets she couldn't yet share. Over the next week, Sarah and Lily returned often. Sometimes it was for small fixes on the bike, other times it was simply an excuse to talk. Each visit peeled back a layer of Sarah's guarded nature. Daniel learned she worked long hours at a local diner, trying to provide for Lily after her husband had walked out on them years ago. It wasn't wealth she struggled with most. It was loneliness. Daniel related all too well, and though their conversations were casual, there was an unspoken understanding between them that grew stronger each time. One evening, Sarah lingered at the shop after picking up Lily. The kids were playing outside while the sun painted the sky orange. She turned to Daniel and said softly, "I don't know why Lily told you that, about marrying me. But she's never said anything like that before." Daniel smiled faintly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Kids have a way of seeing what we adults try to hide," he answered. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, as if searching for something in his face. For the first time, she didn't look away. Weeks later, Daniel invited Sarah and Lily to join him and Ben at the town fair. It was simple: food stalls, music, children running around, but the laughter that echoed from their little group was genuine. Sarah caught herself smiling more than she had in years when Lily tugged on her sleeve and whispered, "See, Mom, he makes you happy." Sarah's heart trembled. She glanced at Daniel, who was lifting Ben onto his shoulders, his laughter strong and kind. In that instant, she realized her daughter's wish wasn't so far-fetched. Maybe kindness, shared struggles, and simple moments of joy could indeed change everything.